Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Ministry Minutes, where we empower you for ministry in 5 minutes or less. Today, we're going to dive into the Synoptic Gospels. We're talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So what we mean by synoptic is just comes from a Greek word. It pretty much means to be seen the same way because they're very similar. Whereas John's account is very unique in its creation and formation. And so what are the key differences here? Why do we put Matthew, Mark, and Luke in their own category? So most scholars believe that Mark wrote first and that Matthew and Luke drew a lot of the same source from Mark. And the way they demonstrate and they depict Jesus' ministry is very unique. So the synoptics will have the geographical sequence in which they place Jesus going from Galilee back to Judea in some way, shape, or form. John's account doesn't even account for Galilean ministry of Jesus, so there's some differences there. The length is as well different. The synoptics have Jesus' ministry running about 1 year to a year and a half, whereas John's is about 2 to 3 years. The content is a big difference in focus. So almost all the content John is unique to John. So he will have his own independent sources as compared to the synoptics. The synoptics focus on Jesus' teachings, his sayings, his deeds. It's very action-packed. His parables will be inside of the synoptics. It's very intense. It's rapid fire. Whereas John's will focus specifically on 7 signs and miracles. There will be no parables, right? No parables of Jesus inside of John. His is more meditative, more philosophical. His development of Christology and of Jesus' deity is more refined than the synoptics. So it's right up in your face. He's telling you all the I am statements, all the Jesus comparing himself to the Father, saying I proceed from the Father. All these very, very explicit sayings that Jesus is God is found inside of John. So we can't talk about the Gospels and not explain the difference between the Gospels and the Gospel. So the Gospels are the writing, the 4 accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They account Jesus' life. It's a historical biography. It's recording his teachings and deeds. And as well, within this, you will find the gospel, the good news, the arrival of God's kingdom, the reason why Jesus was sent to bring an end to Satan's rule on earth. He is showing what it means to be saved, how we can respond to God's kingdom, how we can be a part of God's kingdom. And he demonstrated this with power. Wherever he went, he was demonstrating that God's kingdom had arrived through miracles, through signs, through wonders, through healings. And if you were to boil in a nutshell, what is this good news? The good news is there is a holy God, that though we were sinful, Jesus' death and resurrection covers our sin forever, and we can respond in faith. And it is God's grace that we can be saved now. It is through his grace that we can be saved now. So Jesus was this amazing figure and still is this amazing figure. And he used parables in his teachings, and we see those all throughout the Synoptic Gospels, parables. So parables are the use of concrete language and examples of everyday life to communicate difficult or historic ideas, concepts, and theology. So Jesus was masterful in that he explained the complexity of God's kingdom with the simplicity of everyday lives. And within these parables, you find so many different themes of being lost and found, forgiveness and mercy, what it means to pray and have that intimacy with God, the invitation and rejection of those to God's kingdom, and of course, Jesus' second coming, and so many more different themes. And we'll actually dive in specifically into one of these parables, the Good Samaritan, and see the challenge that we have as a church here in the 21st century, or believers, non-believers, whatever it be, is that when we approach the parables, we need to view them from the lens in which Jesus was sharing them, from the first century viewpoint. So the challenge for us modern interpreters lies in understanding the embedded cultural settings of the parables that we take for granted when we present them. So the Good Samaritan, the question essentially is asked is, who is my neighbor? Or asking Jesus to find who is inside the kingdom, who is outside the kingdom, who should I care for, who should I not care for. And some background that we need to know is Jewish rabbis of the previous centuries that set up this theological point. Specifically Ben Sira and Shimon the Righteous, starting to move Jewish thinking into, hey, there's this intrinsic value of a human being, and then also giving a hierarchy of our priorities. And so the hierarchy should be the study of the Torah, temple service, and deeds of kindness. And so Jesus is embracing this emerging Jewish humanism, but at the same time giving the proper order of which we should be serving God. He's saying, no, you should love your neighbor above it. above the temple service, that there are things greater than temple service, that the human individual need is greater than the temple service. And so Jesus flips masterfully this question. Instead of saying, who is my neighbor? He explains, you go and be the neighbor to everyone around you. So guys, my name is David Hernandez, and this has been Ministry Minutes. Thank you guys. I'll see you next episode.